Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits using technology. Joining me today is Zak Pines of Formstack. Zak, welcome to the show.
Alex, great to be here.
So for those listeners who are hearing you for the very first time, can you give a brief intro of who you are and what you do?
Sure, Alex. I've been in SaaS for way too long. I'll call it a couple decades, and always have loved just working kind of all things sales, marketing, partnerships. Common threads in my career are being closely tied to software ecosystems like Marketo and HubSpot, and now Salesforce, and now at Formstack. The past few years, we've been building our partner program, our partner community. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but greatly appreciative that you're part of that. But a community of product experts who are delivering great solutions for customers every day. And then we have also many technology partners for which we have integrations, and Salesforce is a big part of that as well.
Yeah, so full disclosure for my audience, I am actually a Formstack certified partner. It's one of the reasons why I asked Zak to be here today, but it's not the only reason. And one of the reasons why I actually chose to be a partner is because I do believe in the product and the platform. So the idea here is to share some of what Formstack can do for nonprofits with all of you. So with that being said, I'm curious to know, what was it about Formstack that attracted you to it? Like, what was the reason why you joined the Formstack team?
So, Alex, I joined Formstack through an acquisition, but that is not to say I wasn't incredibly passionate about the company as I learned about it, because I came to learn about Formstack over the course of, this was 2018. And to me, it really struck the chord for me in terms of the kind of company I wanted to work for. Great culture, great products. It's that, for me, that intersection point of opportunity and working with great products and just really enjoying the work every day. And then also just a company that, cares about its people and is building a great culture. So struck the right balance for me. And I've now been at Formstack for almost 4 years to the day and have enjoyed every moment.
And if someone asks you in an elevator, for example, what does Formstack do? What would be your answer?
I would say Formstack is software to help customers solve problems, create better processes that encompass collecting data, workflow, automating document generation, collecting digital signatures, and either doing that in a standalone fashion, or more typically kind of wrapped around a CRM system like Salesforce to create great user experiences for end customers, and help companies kind of save time by creating more effective processes around their business.
There are four main features that you offer, and I was hoping we can go through each one in turn. The fifth one is not really a fifth one by its own. It's more like you said earlier, an integration to Salesforce. So some of these apps are tightly integrated to Salesforce, which is great. So let's go through each one of the four, and then we can deep dive as necessary. So the first one, obviously, Forms. Big surprise there. Can you tell me a bit more about the Form app and how it works?
Yeah, so Formstack, it's in the name, digital forms. So think of it as collecting data at scale. Formstack Forms, it's a no-code, low-code form builder, which means it's a great way to enable a business to more effectively collect information. So it can start with just, and I think the origination of the product was, not having to kind of hand code web forms. So forms that are on a website, forms that are on a landing pages. But then it goes deeper into, well, how can you leverage a form? You could leverage forms to build better business processes, multi-step forms, workflow forms, any way that data is collected from customers, from employees. Yeah, we'll talk more about the Salesforce piece later, but some of the I guess teaser, but we'll talk about some of my favorite capabilities like data pre-fill in a few minutes.
Well, let's jump straight to it, actually, because that's the way that I know Formstack, is because I needed an easy way for my client, who was a nonprofit in Canada, to be able to do donation management. And rather than going with a full package out there, they wanted to go more custom and more customized. and have Formstack capture payments and have it connected directly to Salesforce. So that form is on their website. The information in this particular case isn't autofilled with the person's information, but it does allow a really seamless experience to capture all that information and then give it or transmit it to Salesforce, including payment information. So maybe we can just talk about, how that is done behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two capabilities to work with Formstack and Salesforce. Forms for Salesforce is the quote unquote native, on-platform form builder. When you're building forms directly off your Salesforce data model, it's one of a kind. What I mean by that is any other product, you have to deal with mapping data, syncing data. And believe me, Alex, from my career, and other products I've worked with, I know just how painful that is. That's one of the reasons I was so drawn to the product as I learned about it. So being able to build forms directly off your Salesforce data model, which could include payment forms. There's integrations with PayPal, Stripe, IATS, Authorize.net, all products used by nonprofit customers. So being able to take a form and publish it, maybe publish it to a website, maybe publish it through a Salesforce digital experience cloud, maybe just push out that form through email, leveraging data prefill on that form for any kind of recurring data collection. And then our initial kind of formstack.com form builder also integrates with Salesforce. So what we see in this tends to be maybe more the enterprises, but very complementary use cases. So the Formstack native to Salesforce form builder, when you're building forms kind of deeply pinned to your Salesforce data model, tends to be customer data, tends to be data involving, many Salesforce objects, prefill of data, community cloud. And then the Formstack form builder outside of Salesforce is great just for ad hoc forms. Any user in your business needing to kind of build a form in seconds or minutes to collect information and selectively sync to Salesforce. So in that case, you can control when the data syncs. It's probably not all the data, but if you're on Salesforce and you want your data synced over, you can define when and through which mappings that happens.
So two use cases I can think of. In the first case, it's more of an authenticated experience in that you're logged into, like you said, Experience Cloud or maybe even the website, but you're authenticated. The website or the Experience Cloud knows who you are. And now maybe you want to offer a form that updates your contact information, for example. So it'll render the information that Salesforce already has in terms of your phone number, your email address, and then you're able to go in and modify that data as opposed to starting from scratch. And then the second use case would be more of like a contact form or contact us form, which is a non-authenticated experience. You haven't logged in at any point. And you're basically saying, I want to contact you for XYZ reasons. And then that data is like you said, selectively pushed to Salesforce.
Yeah, you nailed it. I'm gonna add one more to your first. That's kind of, I'll say, an underrated use case, which involves emailing a pre-filled form as a secure link. Email can be a great way to tile it together. I'll give you an example in the nonprofit space that I learned about, early on with many of our partners. Let's call it program management. Maybe I'm managing a program, and over time, I need to collect information from constituents about the success of that program. Those folks, they don't need to be Salesforce users. They don't need to be Digital Experience Cloud users, but I know who they are. You can email out of Salesforce a link to a pre-filled Forms for Salesforce form so that when they receive that link, it's a secure link, they click on it, and then certain information about themselves, their program is pre-filled. Now it's more of a review, verify, update experience. They can add additional information and have that all saved back to Salesforce. And what I hear about that kind of architecture is it's going to lead to way more higher response rates, because if I'm asking someone to review something and add a little bit of information, that's going to be way more successful than having to, fill out that painful blank form that none of us want to have to do. So I love that kind of email pre-fill use case because it tends to really open up the possibilities and just add a ton of value for nonprofits who don't have the resources to follow up, don't have the resources to deal with data in silos and uploading data and kind of tie everything together much more effectively.
That sounds like a good use case for surveys or for post-volunteering activities or post, like you said, program activities. Capturing, what did you do? How much time did you spend doing it? And or did you enjoy our product as a type of survey?
Absolutely. Yeah, all good ones. All real ones I've seen for sure.
I'm curious at a more technical level. I know that emails these days can be actually quite advanced. You can actually can have forms embedded in an email so that people are answering in their email, and that's an actual form. Or in the email, there's a link that you click on, and that brings you to a form where you fill out. Is it the former or the latter?
It is the latter, and the reason for that is it just tends to be a more consistent, reliable experience. With smartphones and different devices, it's hard to control that in email experience, especially if there's a lot of information being captured. So in our case, it's going to just be a simple link I can click and then go right to a very consistent, familiar web form that can have things like conditional logic that is guiding me. Could be a multi-page form depending on the complexity. So that web form is going to give you a lot more control than you'd get in an email.
That's a good point. And that form that you go to, I imagine it's a branded form. You choose, as a client, you choose where that goes, right? It could be a subdomain of your website. It doesn't have the word Formstack written anywhere.
Different ways to configure it, but absolutely can be a branded form, and it can be a standalone form. It can be using embed code. We have a force.com configuration, but you've got control of domain and look and feel absolutely based on some different configuration options that we offer in the product.
And then just to put the last comment for the forms, obviously multi-language, multi-currency, not an issue, right?
Formstack is used globally and can support different languages and different currencies. Yep.
Awesome. Let's move on then to documents. So the big boys in document generation is the Conga Composer type style. It's the one that I'm most familiar with, even though it is sometimes less intuitive to use. Let's use those words. So how does Formstack documents compare? What are the feature sets that it offers?
Yeah, I think when we go kind of down the list, like the value of Formstack is always going to tie to ease of use, faster implementations, no code, low code configuration. So first off the bat, like our partners tell us pretty consistently a Formstack documents project is going to be, let's say, about 1/3 of the time as the equivalent, Conga or other kind of more legacy DocGen products. So ease of use, speed of configuration, flexibility. Flexibility is going to be big. You can use, we've got a build your own documents editor. You can use Word documents. You can use PDFs. Looping is a really popular feature to be able to go deep and build things like invoices or proposals that loop information into tables. You can pair SQL queries to get to an extensive reach into your Salesforce org for dealing with more complex data models where necessary. I think of it as there tend to be like 4 big categories of DocGen use cases. There's a form that can flow right into a document being generated. If there's like a web form where you're capturing information upon what you're generating a document, you can put a button, a Formstack Documents button on any object in Salesforce to allow a user to generate a document, like a proposal or a letter. You can generate a document from a list view. In fact, receipting, we hear about receipting use cases where I need to generate a bunch of documents in batch from a list view. And then the fourth, and my personal favorite, Alex, is being able to call Formstack documents using, a simple Apex trigger, which could tie to some really neat automation use cases. Let's say based on a record in Salesforce, reaching a certain stage or status, we want to trigger a letter to be generated and emailed, or a letter to be generated and mailed. Those kind of triggers can really, open up a lot of possibilities around automation, which ties back to another, difference. Like everything I just described there's no kind of gating of features. So, using the automation features that I just described all part of our standard licensing. So the licensing tends to be very, very straightforward and simple.
Yeah, you covered actually the use cases that I was going to think of very well. So in terms of starting with a document, I imagine you can start from scratch, but can you also start from a Word document? I think you mentioned Word documents themselves. You can generate Word documents. But let's say, for example, I already have a Word document. Can I add what they call merge fields or tags into the document and use that as my starting point as opposed to starting from some kind of WYSIWYG editor?
Yes, you can. And I should have made that more clear, but absolutely, you can start from a Word doc template, add your merge tags. You can start from a fillable PDF. We also support Excel and PowerPoint, both input and output formats, as well as the build your own, all which end up giving customers and partners a lot of versatility for how they want to construct those documents.
That's great. And then in terms of if I wanted to start from scratch, do you have like a template builder where I can like drag in content like images and text? Is that feature available?
It is, yes. So there's a build your own, we call it, build your own. Formstack Documents both has a standalone interface, so you can log into straight at formstack.com. You also can connect your Formstack Documents account directly into the Salesforce org. So both Formstack Forms and Formstack Documents are on the App Exchange. Formstack Forms is the product whereby you can build your forms directly off of the data model. Formstack Documents works a little differently. You're going to connect an API key, but whether you're accessing it through Salesforce or straight directly off of our website, you'll be able to use the build your own document builder if that's what you're looking to do.
That covers, I think, the round for documents. The next logical step, of course, is signatures, being able to capture a signature on a document for either a purchase order or for a approval authorization of some kind of stuff. So for the signature part, do you need to have the document from Formstack? Can you use any documents? How does that work together?
Man, I mean, you're going to hear me use the word versatility a lot because again, I call it, there's an embarrassment of riches. There's a lot of modules or options. And I think, Alex, that's why we work so well with architects like yourself, because you really have, different options that you can recommend based on a customer situation. So signatures, I'm going to take a step back first to point out we have signature blocks directly on both of our forms products. So if the ask is, hey, I want to have a web form and I want to capture a signature, that can be done on a web form. Now, I like to point out that's more of an e-signature. That's not something you'd use on a binding contract, but that could be used where you're looking to basically like stamp a record in Salesforce that, consent has been captured through that web form. So it can be used for maybe like internal employee data capture. It can be used for, kind of the recognition of consent that isn't necessarily tied to like a binding contract. Those are great use cases for the signature block on the web forms. Now, we also have Formstack Sign, a full digital signature product. So when you're generating a document from Formstack Documents, you can add Formstack Sign as a delivery and have that automatically routed out for a multi-step signature routing through email or text as well. You're not limited to Formstack Sign. Formstack Documents is agnostic. We can use other signature products, but we're increasingly finding that customers really appreciate and value that single source, being able to do it all with Formstack. So more and more customers are using Formstack Documents with Formstack Sign. So for example, back to that Salesforce user use case, if I'm clicking a button inside Salesforce to generate a document, with no extra work, it can automatically be routed out for signature. Once that routing has been completed and signatures have been signed and collected from all parties, that final document can save right back to Salesforce attached to that record. You can even automatically update the record. Maybe you want to stamp a value to indicate that the document has been completed. Maybe you want to update an opportunity stage or status. All of that can also be automated. And the very last point I'll say about versatility, Formstack Sign also has its own standalone interface. So if you have additional users that are simply looking to have a very simple, easy to use way to upload a document, route it for signature, we also have that covered. So when you kind of zoom out here in the nonprofit space, we've had nonprofits come to us and say, wow, like we had a survey product, we had a website forms product, we had a document generation product, we had signature products, both in Salesforce and standalone. So we've had nonprofits come to us and say, you've just saved us, 5 or 6 different software relationships that we've now all been able to bring together as one, which is rewarding to hear, because that translates to a lot of time savings, a lot of cost savings, and probably a lot less headaches for these organizations.
Yeah, it is exactly what we were talking about in the pre-show, is that by having to deal with only one vendor that provides multiple apps, it just makes the nonprofits' lives so much simpler, and contract negotiations, support, all that kind of good stuff, and technically too, because these things tend to work together. So that's really great. I'm curious though, you mentioned 2 slight differences between and I think I captured this right, electronic signature and digital signature. Can you explain the difference between the two?
Yeah, so the digital signature is the one that I'm going to say equates to that wet signature, and I call it court level. If it's a binding contract, if it's a sales contract, if it's a document that's going to kind of live on with a full audit trail, who signed it when, digital signature, that's going to be the digital signature that you'd want to use a product like Formstack Sign to collect. That's Formstack Sign, whereby either through automated routing or the upload of a document to the Formstack Sign interface. And e-signature is what I would equate to a signature captured on a web form that could be stamped to Salesforce. It could even be printed on a document, but it's going to have a less of a legal binding nature than the digital signature. And there's use cases for both. And again, back to the versatility of our products, we have many customers that would be using us for both based on the process that they're designing.
I've seen some scenarios, and I'm not talking about Formstack specifically, where you type your name and that's considered a type of signature, versus I actually take my mouse and I kind of draw, like you said, a wet signature onto the keypad. Is that like the equivalent? The typing the name is the electric or e-signature, and the drawing is the digital?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. Yes.
The 4th product then, I guess, kind of ties everything together. It's called Platform. And I know it has to do with a bit of automation. Maybe you can explain a bit more about what Platform does.
Yeah, if you see the Formstack platform mentioned, it is tying everything together. It also brings in workflow. There's been a lot of really great investment from the Formstack team to sort of better orchestrate how all this comes together. So if you see things like, another term you'll hear if you're kind of inside the Formstack product, Copilot. Copilot, part of the Formstack platform, lets you orchestrate a workflow. So Alex, let's say you wanted to collect information on a form and then present that information as part of a signing experience. Let's say you want to collect the information on a form and then pass that along to another team member to review and essentially pre-fill from like kind of form A to form B. So workflow in the Formstack context, Copilot in the Formstack context is going to make it easier for our customers to build these types of multi-step business processes and ultimately like build faster and more reliably across these different tools, these different modules that Formstack provides. And it's very complementary, again, to Salesforce. So, Salesforce, you're going to be going, much deeper probably into your customer data, and the Formstack suite is going to extend that with your ability to control data collection across all your users and manage business processes more easily without a lot of complexity for how they're built and managed.
When it comes to Salesforce, of course, has its own automation, namely flows. So how would you compare the platform to flows? Why would you use one over the other?
And again, what's great about this is everything's complementary to each other. So, I've pointed out like forms for Salesforce, Formstack documents for Salesforce. Those are going to be used with flow. So, if flow is what you're using to control and orchestrate kind of processes kind of deeply tied to Salesforce, Formstack tools are going to plug in very nicely. But when you start to kind of inch outside of maybe your customer data and you're dealing, Alex, with internal processes, you're dealing with non-Salesforce users, the Formstack workflow products are going to be kind of much more of a no-code experience and probably way faster to deploy.
Okay. So aside from Salesforce, I know we've been talking a lot about Salesforce. It tends to be one of my favorite topics, but I'm curious to know what other systems do you integrate with?
There are hundreds. There's hundreds of systems, Alex. So we've talked about payments, which tends to be another kind of complement any kind of payment form. So PayPal, Stripe, IATS, Authorize.net, and others. Another category, database. What I think of as databases, Formstack is great at collecting information efficiently, generating documents from data. So products like QuickBase, Airtable, Smartsheet are great integrations and great partners for us. More broadly as well, I mean, you'll find Formstack very commonly featured in like the Zapier marketplace. Formstack has webhooks, Formstack has APIs. So it's a very open product that customers can use and extend with their own integrations as well.
And then in terms of branding, we talked a bit about before about going to a website that is, branded according to the nonprofit needs. Is it fair to say that for maybe not for platform, but for everything else that's customer facing, the customer doesn't necessarily know they're dealing with Formstack. It does feel like a branded experience that they're communicating directly with the nonprofit.
Yes. Again, back to the question there. So Formstack Forms, let's say you're building a branded experience on a website. Then you're going to use our embed code to embed a Formstack form. And you're going to have full control of that when doing so.
Okay. What about data encryption? That's obviously, especially in the nonprofit world, sometimes we deal with personal data and highly sensitive data. How are the web forms and the various types of apps using data encryption?
Yeah, security is a big strength of Formstack. So data will be encrypted. You have the option, if you're using the Formstack submission table to store your data, you have the option to encrypt that data at all times. And, you would then be kind of forced to use an encryption key when accessing it. As a sidebar, Alex, nonprofits is a big vertical for us. Healthcare is actually our biggest vertical. So all of our products are HIPAA compliant. So we're used to operating at the highest level of security, with HIPAA being a good example. On the Salesforce platform, the native nature of our product also lends itself really well to incredibly high security. There's a plan called Native Cloud on the Forms for Salesforce kind of additions. And in general, Forms for Salesforce is always native, but Native Cloud takes it one more level, because any data that is processed will also be processed local to that Salesforce org in addition to stored. And that's going to operate in a HIPAA compliant manner with Health Cloud. That's going to operate in like a FedRAMP compliant manner with Government Cloud. That's something that, I know you're in Canada. If a customer was ever to say, not only do I want my data stored in Canada, I need my data processed on Canadian servers, 100% of the time, the pairing of a Salesforce org hosted in Canada with Native Cloud would accomplish that in a highly secure way. Also works great with Salesforce Shield. So data that's encrypted inside of Salesforce can still be used or collected on a Forms for Salesforce form. So gave you a lot of options there. That probably ties back to the versatility point. But yeah, the bigger message is, if security is important to you, Formstack is going to have you covered.
The data residency is definitely a concern for a lot of Canadians. That we, for some reason, which I don't really quite know, but I guess I can understand, there are some, especially large nonprofits, that need to have data residency remaining in Canada. The idea of data being shipped out is not looked upon favorably, let's say. So it's great to see that you can do that. And you got the Salesforce Shield, which is another popular product for high security, high encryption within Salesforce. So that's great to see that you're natively integrated, or at least play nice with it. I'm curious to know about pricing, and before we get on to, because I want to know about the partner side of things as well. So how does pricing work, and how do let's start with there. How does pricing work for each of these apps?
Number one, it's modular, so you can sort of choose. Based on what we've talked about today, we have forms, document, sign. I'd say increasingly we're seeing customers opt for that kind of bundle because there's so much value there. The main levers or things to look at are going to be things like, for forms for Salesforce, like how many Salesforce users are going to be managing forms at a broad level, like number of submissions to those forms over the course of a year. At a broad level, how many documents generated. I mentioned that, our documents pricing is very simple. That's really the main question for the documents use cases. How many documents are being generated over the course of a year? Don't have to worry about things like how many Salesforce users are generating documents, just purely based on that metric. Formstack offers a 25% nonprofit discount as well. So, our pricing is even friendlier for nonprofits. We're very hands-on. So if anyone is listening to the podcast and wants to work with us, it's not, hey, go to the website and figure this stuff out. You're welcome to reach out directly. We'll put you in the hands of a great salesperson who's partner friendly, who can help in a big way. So pricing modular, pretty simple compared to competitors, and definitely very nonprofit friendly with the 25% nonprofit discount.
In terms of that onboarding process, let's say there's a nonprofit client that wants to reach out. Are you just and you kind of alluded to the answer, but are you just a product company in that you sell the product and thank you very much, or do you provide some kind of professional services, guidance? How do they get started actually working with the forms, for example? Maybe you refer to partners or a combination of.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, again, head up the partner team. So we are very, I'd say, partner first. So we've got a great network of partners to help, depending on what's needed. We also have an excellent customer experience team that ranges from support, customer success managers, and services. So sort of based on a given customer situation and their interest in working with partners, that's typically where we would start as a partner team. We would kind of make sure that they are choosing the right plans to support them. But you'll find, I think, universally, in our competitive set, ease of working with, getting really good support. These are things that customers are gonna call out about Formstack.
So how do you become a Formstack partner then?
Formstack partner, number one, you can reach out directly to me. You'll find me on LinkedIn. We have a great partner onboarding team run by one of my team members, Amanda Nielsen. I've written a lot of content about our partner philosophy, but basically open arms. If the kind of products we've talked about today are of interest, that's what makes a great Formstack partner. Someone that's passionate about the product, someone that's passionate about the solutions. We're not going to qualify you. We're going to enable you. I call it enablement first. So we're going to spend time with you, make sure that the product's focused on a joint solution. Sometimes, those ideas spark right away. Oh, we were even talking earlier, Alex, this customer has this need, this customer has that need, so oftentimes that can lead to a pretty immediate project. If it doesn't, we would say, how do you become a partner? Show proficiency with the products, build out a proof of concept, choose a vertical use case that you want to build and demo back to us. So we tend to be very practical, and we would say to become a partner, you got to show product proficiency. We've got plenty of on-demand training modules for those looking for that content, and ultimately kind of your first kind of Formstack project that you bring together and demonstrate that use case back to the Formstack partner team is what we use for the partner certification. And we celebrate that every single month on LinkedIn by sharing out kind of the announcement on who has newly become a Formstack partner, both as individuals and as companies.
Do you offer multiple partner certifications, or is it just one?
It starts with that initial project. And then we also have a product called Formstack Tracks, where you could do kind of individual product certifications in a self-paced manner as well. We're also, Alex, I'll add, like, we'll be building all of that out, thinking about kind of the continuous partner experience further, over the course of next year as well. So you'll be seeing more ideas come to life that the team has in terms of making our partner experience even richer going forward.
I'm happy to hear that. What else is in the future for Formstack as a company?
Partner ecosystem is one of our big themes. So you're going to see even more resources around our partner program and our partner team, continued focus on the Salesforce ecosystem, delivering joint value. You're going to see more around that platform experience. So us improving the experience of our products and how they work together. Those are all things, that you'll continue to see from us in the months ahead.
Fantastic. So if there is a nonprofit or a potential partner looking to reach out to you, what is the best way to contact you?
I mean, to keep it simple, if you're on LinkedIn, Zak Pines, ZakPines. If you want to send a connect invite and reference this podcast, that's probably the easiest way, because then we'll get straight connected on LinkedIn and I can help you from there.
Awesome. Zak, thank you so much for joining me today.
Alex, this has been fun. Great. You asked great questions, and it was a really, really great discussion.
Oh, the pleasure was mine. All right, then that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me in the next Agents of Nonprofit.